marketing, and personal development with Paul Ramsey. Right there.
And Ifat
The
Cohen.
other way. There you go. High five. We can do high virtual five now without touching each other. Look.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's safe for the yeah.
Yeah. So, hey everyone, welcome to The Naked Truth. We found a name for our segment at 1 p.m. Tell us how you like it. We're calling it The Naked Truth because we want to kind of like remove the screen, break down all the smoke and mirrors and the barriers and all that jazz of everything that's happening in business, in marketing, and in personal development. So, and we feel like all of it is kind of like tied together as one because if you want to run a good business, then you do need to become a leader and have a lot of personal development and stuff that you work on to become the person who can run a business to the level that you want to. Right, Paul?
It's absolutely true.
It is
I
true.
have nothing else to add. That's true.
That's true. So that's why we're calling it The Naked Truth. And today we are going to talk about nothing time. Paul, have you heard of nothing time?
I've never heard of this phrase. Tell me more.
Nothing time. So I am going to share my screen because, like that, I'm going to share my screen like that. Let me see. Hold on a second.
It happens in the dark? Is that what
It
you're trying to
happens
say?
in the dark.
Go into a dark room
This is where nothing time takes place.
and nothing
And
happens.
nothing happens. I actually want to share the screen because this is not my thing. It's Leon Purton actually wrote this article in Medium that I can share with you guys. And what he's saying here that is very interesting is all your bonds, all your best relationships, all the things that are really, really great happened when you were just chilling with your friends doing nothing, right? Like on the side of the pool or as he's saying it, like, random conversations that are happening and that, or the random conversation, around bedtime with your parents or your brothers and your sisters or, sleepovers. That's when you kind of like let go, did nothing and truly connected with one another. And so he's saying that in this time of the corona, we can actually take time for this, right? And in the nothing time, connect to a few things, connect to ourselves, connect to each other, and connect to the purpose that we're doing in the world. And so you're in personal development, Paul. How does that kind of like apply to what you're doing?
Well, so it's the first thing it reminds me of is I've seen movements over the past years for what they call like no tech time, like it's
Right.
the same idea of like or unplugged time, some people call it, right? Like so I think that yeah, I mean this is not a groundbreaking thing. It is a nice reminder to have structured time to do nothing
Yeah.
which is kind of a paradox or an oxymoron, right? But what happens is we live in a culture where because we don't do this stuff as naturally as we used to, you have to structure it to get yourself back to doing it. So it
Yeah.
takes me back to when I worked at the University of New Hampshire almost 20 years ago. I was running a residence hall and I had a staff of 4 student workers. They each ran a floor in the residence hall. And one of the common practices that I and my colleagues who ran the other halls did, we made all of our resident assistants keep a planner, a personal planner,
Yep.
and they had to do block time, right? They had to do color coded block time. So they had to color code when their classes were,
Right.
if they had a work study job or something else like that, color code it, and did all that stuff. Like, when are you going to study? When are you going to do your hourly commitments for your resident assistant job? And then the part that always surprised them was I insisted that they have a color that was their personal self time, that they actually had to schedule time for themselves, for self-care and to just be, because I knew that if they didn't, they were going to get so caught up in all the other stuff that their self-care wasn't going to be there. So it's funny, like you it's a skill. Everything in life is a skill. You have to have people structure it for themselves at first.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you and I were kind of talking about how we don't make time for friends anymore like we used to, right? And what he's saying is that it's harder even to schedule nothing time with friends. Even though that's the time where you bond the most with people, it's hard to say, hey, why don't you come over and we'll do nothing? And you read a book,
Yeah.
we just hang out.
I will tell you, maybe my favorite quote in my life. I'm one of those people who I do enjoy quotes. And Blaise Pascal once said or wrote, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to what we're talking about here too, that we have this thing, and you remember Manny St. Victor from the Google Plus days?
Yeah. I love how
Manny
his
first
stuff.
taught me about the brain side of this. So we have this brain network called the default mode network. And it's this brain network that when you don't have any task orientation, when you have nothing to do,
Right.
the default mode network clicks on and you start thinking about things you haven't been thinking about.
Yeah.
And that's where rumination and worry come from.
Yeah.
And so that's another element of this is what happens is we live in this world where what we've sort of learned, I personally think that's why ADD and ADHD are at all-time highs, is what we've learned without teaching it explicitly is if you stay busy, you won't get to that moment in which you have to sit around and think about the experiences and emotional events of your life which have made you uncomfortable.
Totally. And so what's interesting right now, right, is like we're in forced isolation. And so people are forced to, unless you're working online like we are, then you all of a sudden have nothing to do. And that can drive people into, a little crazy mode because it's like, what am I doing all day? There's no purpose, right? Why do I get up why will I get up? Why will I get dressed? Why will I put on makeup? Why do I even asked a few people, I was like, do you put perfume on? I was like, guys, if you're watching us right now, do you get dressed in the morning? Do you put, makeup, cologne? Do you put perfume on if you just need to be at home with your family? Because that's the kind of stuff that's like, at the beginning, it's like, what am I doing? I need to do, right? But we're human beings and we forgot how to be. And so
exactly, that's it. We're human beings. Yeah. We're not human doings.
Right.
And that's what we really lose. We think about what do I do? No, maybe you don't do anything. Maybe you just be for a little bit and learn to get comfortable with just being again.
And so how do you do that, right? And like, how do you just be? And I think it's easier for you and I because we're just, masters of our times, owners of our domains in our house. It's just us, you and the dog, me and the computer.
Well, I'll tell you, here's my version of it. You ready?
Yeah.
So, for the past week, I was working like 12-hour days on that online wellness conference, right? And then I had the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it happened. So I was going from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. all through the weekend too. So for really like 10 or 11 days, I was just 12-hour days. And then Monday I was sort of, I didn't do a 12-hour day, but I worked a lot. We're just trying to, what do I do now? How do I get organized for what's next? Yesterday, I was like, all right, enough. Like you're almost like creating a habit and you need to not create that habit. That's not good for you. Right. So I told you this, my goal for this week is to work every day from 9 a.m. until I have this with you. And then once I'm done with this, then to go outside and like work on my landscaping or cut firewood or do anything that gets me outside and helps me move my body, right?
Yeah.
So yesterday was the first day I did that. And I went out and all I did was rake grass and leaves. And when I woke up this morning, I felt like I had fought a bear. Like,
yeah, you're like so sore.
Oh, not used to it. I would have been sitting for so long that just raking. I woke up in the morning, I was like, oh, why can't I roll over? Like, it was ridiculous. It was crazy.
I know. And so I'm actually trying to walk more. I was like, okay, let me just go for an hour walk, see the sun, I discovered that my neighborhood is beautiful. I'm like, right? On the other side, they're like open grass and like fields and like really, really cool things. Hey, Annie. Yeah, she says, hey, Paul, me too. So
it's an easy trap for all of us who are small business owners, especially to get in, right? Because there's always something to do. You're never done. There's always something to do. And so again, it becomes a form of discipline. It becomes a form of hygiene. That's the word I always use again. I'm like, look, we all know every day you take a shower most days, you brush your teeth most, like you're supposed to have
You like, hopefully most people
right?
do that, right? Yeah.
Right. So, but we don't talk about mental hygiene,
Right.
emotional hygiene, spiritual hygiene. We only seem to ever culturally be fixated on physical forms of hygiene. And I'm like, that's not enough.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And so what this guy is saying here in this article is like 3 ways to actually use nothing time. So he's talking about, nothing time and isolation, which is what we're kind of like forced to do. So on one hand, and someone was saying, you're not stuck at home, you're safe at home, right? The reframing that we were talking about.
Nice reframe.
Right? So you're safe at home, and now you're safe at home with your family and your friends, and you have nothing to do. So what can you do? And so he's giving here like 3 different things that you can do. One is like connecting with yourself, just taking some time for yourself and not distracted, not picking up the phone, not scrolling through Netflix, So one of the things that is really funny, I don't know if you do that, but when you go to the toilet, do you take your phone with you?
No.
You don't?
No.
It's only me and my son. And the rest
No,
of
I know there's some other people that do, but I just don't. I've always been like, look, I'm pretty good about being like, I go there to do what I mean to do and then get on with my life. I don't, that old thing of in the older generations, people would take a newspaper or a magazine. I would never. I'm like, no, I go there to do my business and then get out of there and get to what's next.
Yeah. So when I was a little girl, I'm the oldest of 4. And my mom always had chores for us. And I loved reading. So I would take my book and I would go to the bathroom with it. And an hour later, she'd be like, are you there with a book? I was like, no. So for me, it's kind of like, well, you have to do something on, while you're sitting on the toilet. But, like what he's saying is like, take some time without the phone. I don't know if the toilet is the right place, but maybe it's a start. And just disconnect and connect to yourself, to your emotion. How do you feel, in isolation right now? Are you stressed? Are you happy? Are you depressed? Do you feel like you're moving into survival mode and you're, like, don't know what's going to come next? So how, all these feelings, how do you connect to yourself and how do you deal with them? Paul, you have a lot of programs that help people with anxiety and sleep. Stress,
so I mean, the biggest thing you're talking about, in my world, is I say, this is where you do mindfulness training, right? Yeah. Like when you're getting to this point where you feel overwhelmed, you've got a lot going on, life is getting shaken up. What I always talk with my clients about is that's when you go back to just basic mindfulness. And the funny thing is people, when they were really caught in their work lives, would go, I don't have time for that. And I'm like, right. You make time for what's important. And more than anything right now, self-care is important. This is not just like you should be doing this because of Corona. Like you should be doing this every day of your life. You learn to sit and notice what you notice without judging it. Right. So so I would say, look, no, what you do is you go to the toilet and you sit on the toilet and you just notice what you notice. And maybe you notice that you're at the toilet. And even while you're at the toilet, you're thinking about what you have to go do next. Right. Now, the first thing most people are going to do is they're going to judge that. Is that the right thing for me to think about or the wrong thing? Nope, we don't do that. You just notice. Right now, I notice I am thinking about what I'm going to do after I finish using the bathroom. And it's about getting back to awareness without judgment, because we're so self-judging all the time. Yeah. And that adds to our stress and our emotional dysfunction, right? It's maladaptive most of the time. So we want to have adaptive structures. We want to have things that help us. And so what you do is you practice that as much as you can. And eventually you get to a place where you get better at just going, oh, I noticed that. And then you don't have a self-recriminating response or a judgmental, reaction to having the thought. You just have the thought. And then what you can do is you can step back from that further and say, I notice that I am having, so first is I'm having this thought, and then it becomes, the goal is to work consistently to, I notice that I'm having this thought. So you're stepping outside of yourself. You're having a mild level of dissociation, and then you're not so in it. And when you're not so in it, you don't get bothered by it as much.
Right.
And that's what people really need right now, right? They need to be without being bothered by how they're being.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And so there are a few things that, you know, the article is talking about how to get to connect with yourself, right? Like morning pages, or like writing stuff down, or you know, having some goals, or like Paul is saying, just starting to notice. Because, you know, it's very interesting when as a parent, when I notice the way that I respond to Leo, completely changes the way that I see him, right? So like if I'm going like, oh, this nuance that's like bugging me right now because I'm trying to do something, or no, my child is asking for attention, right? But like the way that I sometimes hear myself talking, and I was like, fudge, I shouldn't have yelled, I should have done, certain things. And so I actually come to him and I apologize. I'm like, this has nothing to do with you. I was thinking about something else and you just wanted my attention and it was in the way, and I'm sorry, I yelled at you or something. And so my child would go like, next time I yell, he goes like, is it about me? Or is it something else that's going on in your head?
That's what I love about him. Whenever you tell those stories, I'm like, I love that he learns that fast. Yeah.
But it throws it back in my face. I'm like, fudge, I need to like work
But
on
it's a fair question, right? Well,
It
you
is.
gave him an awareness.
Yeah.
And now he's using that awareness. And sometimes he may be doing it to push your button, but sometimes he may be doing it because he's like, no, you taught me that there's
Right.
discernment. So I'm trying to figure it out. Is it about me right now, or is it really about you?
Yeah.
Because if it's about you, I'm not going to bother with it.
Right? Yeah, he's
Yeah.
and like every time I'm telling people, I was like, every time you think like you're an awesome person, go have kids, because they'll show you all the things that you're not doing right, or all the things you need to work on, or all the things that you're like, projecting on them. One of the best ways to get self-development, right? Personal development
Totally.
is have kids. So back to the article, to the nothing time. So you can take nothing time and do it with yourself, or you can take nothing time and actually do it with others, and connect to other people. So he's given a few examples here where you can do a puzzle together, right? And just sitting around with your family and doing nothing, just trying to figure out a puzzle. Or virtual beers. There's a guy, I can't remember his name, Andrew something. They started doing karaoke on Saturday nights.
Nice.
Yeah, right? So it's like just people coming together. You can't do it really very well with Zoom and stream because there's lagging in the voices and stuff. But they're just coming together and having,
You know what my
chit-chats.
friend Jody just did that was amazing?
What's that?
My friend Jody is an occupational therapist, and she works in a school district with kids all the time. And she knew that she lives in a neighborhood, right? There's like houses all around and a lot of kids in the neighborhood. And she knew that a lot of families having their kids, they need ways for their kids to be active. And she always thinks developmentally about kids. She went outside and she took chalk and she made what she calls a sensory chalk walk, where she drew all these different things on the streets, like, I don't know, maybe 150, 200 feet long. So at first it was just like hopscotch. And then it was like a trail to follow and it wrapped around. And then it was the alphabet and you had to hop and say the letters out loud. And she had all these things to do. And she made that whole thing. And it was designed to have them move their bodies, be coordinated. But there were directions too. So they had to follow directions.
Nice.
and do tasks. And then she demonstrated, she did like a run on, walkthrough on it. And she took that video and put it on YouTube. And it's been watched over 700,000 times.
What? That is
She
super
totally
cool.
went viral because it's the truth. Is families are home and they're looking for things for their kids to do like this, and they don't know what to do. And so her timing was perfect.
That's
And
so
so
cool.
now she's had her first viral video in her life. It's awesome.
And so now she's the chalk lady.
Yeah, kind of. She's got to decide whether she's going to have it be a one and done or whether she wants to keep doing it. But again, so you can do something like that in your community. And as long as the parents are smart, you don't want all the kids out doing it together, right?
Yeah.
But they can take turns where they can do that and it's just chalk on the street, right? Like it's not harming the environment, and it's not as long as the parents are monitoring the kids, it's not putting the kids at risk. You can do stuff like that in a smart way that helps your kids and helps you with, managing the things you have to manage. I just thought it was awesome.
I think it's great. There's a a Facebook group apparently for my community that I'm not a part of yet. Come on, let me in. so, and so when I was I was going for my walk. They're like, "Are you not on? Oh, enjoy your walk and find the emojis that we're putting on the houses." And I'm like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, aren't you in our Facebook group?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Yeah, so join the Facebook group, and then every house puts like emojis, and they change them over the day, and then you just have to go and house by house and find the emojis and like comment with it or something. I don't know. I'm not in the group, but
That's cool.
right? They're kind of like finding ways of connecting with each other.
I was noticing this morning, we live in an age where people really enjoy memes, right?
Right.
And so this new meme that seems to have developed is people are posting funny Twitter threads that develop. So like, I don't use Twitter anymore. I used to, but I do use Facebook. And now I keep seeing these they're really like a gallery almost, because it takes several screen grabs that they have to put in a row for you to get through the thread.
Yep.
And so it's like a slideshow and you watch. And it's so like the one I just looked at was this guy who had a whole Twitter thread about how he was at a party and he was eating a Triscuit. And he said to the people in the party, like, where does Triscuits get their name from? And they and nobody knew. So he ended up contacting Nabisco, and they couldn't even give him an answer. They didn't have an official documentation of it. And this whole thread unraveled where he finally tracked it down and then sent what he learned to Nabisco, and then they looked it up and confirmed it. And it was like there's all this stuff like that that's coming out because, again, people have more time on their hands in some ways, right? And they're making all of these, like the amount of funny and entertaining and amusing stuff that's coming out is like at an all-time high, which is kind of cool.
It's really nice, right? And so does that give you faith back in humanity that, just given the time, because my socialist self, right? A lot of people would be like, "Oh, you're too communist." But I'm thinking that if our basic needs were covered, I should not do this. Our basic needs were covered, right? We didn't have to worry about just rent, basic food, not caviar, but like, just enough so that we don't starve, electricity, water, health, education, just basic. That's covered. People will start doing what they're doing right now. All of a sudden, husbands are baking. They're watching YouTube videos and they're making all these kinds of like, gourmet meals because they have the time. Or they start drawing, or they start doing, other things that they're like, Stephen Colbert replaced a tire in his bicycle because he's like, "Hey, I remember I used to do this when I was young, and now I have the time and I have a bicycle that's not working. Let me replace the tire." So I'm always wondering, like, what kind of a society will we have if, you didn't have to do stuff just for money, but you were a doctor because you loved being a doctor and really helping people. Or you were a lawyer because you really cared about justice and not just about, I'm going to win this case. Like, how will that affect our society?
It's so much more complex than we ever recognize at first. I mean, there's so many factors involved. I think if we were going to try to simplify that, I think what it comes down to is what you see over and over again is that people want to have a sense of purpose. They tend to default to wanting the safety of having money so they can have a roof over their head and clothes on their back and food in their bellies, right? But as soon as they have that, for the most part, it doesn't matter how much of it they have. Once they have a sense of like, I have enough to get by, then it all goes to, but do I have a sense of purpose? And that's why you see people who have way more than they need and they're still miserable because what they're doing does provide that stuff, but it doesn't really give them a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And so I think that's, the other interesting side, which you got to remember with social media. Here I am talking about all the cool stuff I see, but that's because on social media, people mostly only post the cool stuff. Like there are many thousands of people right now, I am certain, who are miserable because really they're in a partnership that they're just going through the motions in. And every day when they could go to work, it was what kept it you could get by, and now they're home with that person and they're both absolutely miserable. Well, they're not going to post about it and talk about it on social media. So there's a lot going on.
You're bringing up a really good point where, domestic violence people, which is a really bad time for them right now, right? So I think
Yeah, especially when people aren't getting paychecks and they're not, they're stressed and they're scared. Yeah.
and and now there's no paychecks, and you're stuck at home with the person that you're beating all day long. And so in France, they started sending them to hotels, which is interesting. So there has to be some kind of a way that we're helping each other, right, through all that stuff. So to end this and wrap it up, I think, if you can take some nothing time, and I'll share the article because it's really, really good, and kind of like ponder it for yourself, like take this time and, try to become version 2.0 of yourself, right? More connected to yourself, more connected to your family, more connected to your community. Then you can end on the other side in a better, emotional way than what you were when you got into it. Long story short. Right? And if you need help with personal development, that guy over there can help you. He's got some conference that you can tap into. So tomorrow, and I love the fact that you have decided for yourself that you're like, hey, I'm just going to work 9 to 2 p.m. where the show is happening, and then I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to take time for my yard. I'm going to do things that I enjoy, because every time you and I talk, I'm like, man, I should be reading books like Paul does and not like be watching movies all the time.
But I do that too. Again, it's it's a little bit of everything, but I do. I just think what I find, because I am human, is that even though I know all this stuff about these different skills and everything, I still get to these points where I get off habit. Right. And I'm doing too much Netflix and no book reading. And then I go, okay. And so this is one of those things where I'm like, I worked my butt off. I made my wellness conference. I had a great experience, but I gave up other things for a little while. I'm like, okay, then you have to create a new structure. You have to go back and do that thing. You got to move your body. You need to be out in the sun, in the fresh air. You need your vitamin D, and so you got to be willing to be honest with yourself about it, and then go, what do I do about that? And so that's one skill that I do have pretty well, where I can, assess it and then go, okay, come on, do something about it.
And then actually do something about it.
Yeah.
And then if not, then you have a support circle community that can help you, right? So hopefully you guys benefited from learning what nothing time is, and you give it a try. Just give it a try. See how that works for you. If it does, fantastic. If it doesn't, that's okay. If you want a supportive community that you can tap into and practice all these things with, viralconnectivity.com/live. I'm going to share it like this so you actually can see it right here. It's faster. viralconnectivity.com/live. You can go there, you can click a button, and you can join our community. You can also watch all the replays and everything like that. Our community is completely free. I'm going to share my screen so you can see right here. This is us live right now. So you can click here and hop in and just get into our community, download Telegram, join us, and you'll get a complete, community of like-minded people that can help you on your journey of adapting and pivoting in this time to either a better you, version 2.0, or a better business 2.0. So with that, let me just tell you, tomorrow, Paul is going to join me on I'm That Geek, aren't you, Paul?
Yes.
Yes. We are going to talk about leading from within. And we have with us the podcaster, Eric Rogel, who's talking about warriors, lovers, kings, and heroes. And he's going to give you an actual formula of step by step how you can tap into the hero from within and lead. Because we do need leaders right now. And I know a lot of people going like, should I lead? Am I good enough to lead? Is it my place to lead? How do I lead? What do I do? So if that's you want to motivate your team more, you want to inspire your community, join us tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here. Right, not here. I'm thatgeek.com.
Yeah, not here.
Right, not here. I'm thatgeek.com. You'll see all my posts and everything is talking about that. So hopefully we'll see you same time, different place. And I'll see you. Oh, and Paul, we are on Friday. We are talking with Karen
Right. We got
about
2 guests in 2 days. Yeah.
yes, we do. We're talking with Karen about starting getting $1,000 this month. It's not an April Fool's Day joke. You can actually do that if you follow her system, and it's very short and it's very fun. And I am going to take my chances on it as well. Hopefully, you join us. So until then, have a fantastic Wednesday. We will see you tomorrow on I'm That Geek Show. And Paul, are you going to work the yard? What are you going to do now?
I'm gonna go outside and keep working my yard. Yeah, I got a big yard and I got a lot of raking
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah. Have fun. We'll see you guys